All right, I'd like to take a look at a couple more tools that can help you do some basic color correction. So let's go over to our effects, and this time let's take the three-way color corrector. We'll go ahead and add that to the clip we were just working on. We'll go back to our effect controls. If you remember, this was how we started the clip initially. The three-way color corrector has a lot going on for it. It's similar in ways to the fast color corrector. Instead of one wheel, there are three here. The nice thing about this is you can pull colors in the direction that you want for your shadows, the dark areas, for your highlights, the bright areas, or for the midtones. And you can do them pulling different corrections for each set, or you can select the master button here, and then any correction you make on any one of these is copied. So you can see it's reflected immediately in our change. And I'll go ahead and reset that. When using the three-way color corrector, it's also a good idea to do your luminance first. So we'll go over and change to our YC waveform. Again, just as before, our levels are too low. We need to address that. We've got our input level here that we can raise up, so we can see some increasing here. We can make sure that our blacks are at the right level, and then we can work with our midtones to get back some of that detail and spread it out a little bit better. So we've addressed the tonality here. Now we have to address the color. So we'll go ahead and switch to our vector scope. Now, one of the things when you look at a scene is often the vector scope can be confusing because you don't know exactly what is it that I'm looking at in general, because it's a big cluster of items here. If I were to change scenes here just quickly, it would be really difficult in some of these when there's all kinds of activity going on in these shots to know, well, what am I actually referencing when I'm looking at the vector scope. So there's a technique that we can use to kind of isolate what we're looking at. So to do that, let me go back to effects, and I'm going to take the crop effect, and I'm going to put this on our clip that we're working with. And now I have the crop control, and I'm actually going to move this up top so that the crop happens before the color correction. And you'll see why here in a second. If I click on the name or this little box over here, I now have control in my program window of the shape of the crop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a small box that I can move around, manipulate, and isolate colors. So if I were to isolate the sweater alone, and here's without the crop, with the crop, I can check and see in here, well, what am I what is going on with the black in my scene? The black should be right on the center dot. And if we look at the blacks, the darks, the shadows, if you will, they seem to be kind of pulling in this general direction, this green area, if you will. And if we were to expand this and look, that black sweater does kind of look green here. Okay, so it allows us to isolate a particular area and see, well, what's going on. So if in the shadows we are pulling towards green, we can come to our three-way, and as we discussed before, I can pull away from the green. Now, what this is doing for us, if I turn it on, turn it off, notice that the blacks were not quite in the center dot where they need to be before. When I pull the green, now I've centered the blacks. We can turn off our crop and see what kind of effect this has caused in our image. Well, it's changed the color of the sweater, certainly, to a little bit more from green to black. So if in fact this was a black sweater, now it looks black. We can use our crop again for other things. So instead of looking at the sweater as we did, maybe I want to look at her skin. Okay, and I can change this shape. Remember, the skin, the skin tone of our subject should be such that it goes up the skin line here. And if we look, and this is kind of a mid-tone thing here, so I can come to my mid-tone and say, I'm pulling in this quadrant up here at around 10 o'clock. I need to go to the reverse of that down here a little bit towards the blue and cyan. So I can take my mid-tones and I can pull those in the hopes of getting it back on. Let's see if we get. So now it's kind of in there. Let's see if we can do this by pulling. Yeah, let's pull towards the line instead. Instead of doing the inverse, let's pull towards the line. And you can notice now that the skin tone is starting to move up that line. Now, if I want to add more, I can pull a little bit more. And hopefully we didn't make it too red. Let's turn off our crop. And then we can see that, in fact, her skin tone and everything is lined right up on the skin line. So we can make the corrections to the brighter areas, the darker areas, by using the crop tool to isolate them and making sure that things are what we're looking at on our scope is a little easier to see. So here we're using a combination of our tools together. Now, when we did our tonality down here, or our brights and our highlights and our shadows and our gamma, we could have done this using a curve as we did previously, or any one of the other tools. Frankly, I often find it easier to use separate tools for the brightness adjustments, and then an additional tool for the color. In this way, I can I can make changes to one without affecting the other. And especially if I feel like I've really messed up and I need to reset it, I can reset the entire effect, the color correction of. Notice everything goes back. Now I've reset not only the brightness adjustments with the color as well, and that can cause me to do more work. I'm going to Control Z to undo it. Had I made the tonality adjustments with a separate effect, I can reset those independently and not create more work for myself. So just to give you the last before and after, using our three-way color corrector, but more importantly, by bringing the crop in and looking at different segments of our video so that I can make the proper adjustments to the shadows, the midtones, and the highlights as necessary.